let's look at how to make a blueprint for a radio that we can carry around, and we can also turn it on and off with this button. It will turn red when it's off and green when it's on, and it will play random songs from our catalog of songs from different categories too, and we'll kind of make a mix of different songs to play. The first thing we need is a radio or a boombox, and I got mine from Meshy. If you saw my last video, you know a little bit about that. You can generate different objects, and so for this I'm going to use the orange boombox. For this tutorial, I already made the silver one before, and so I will just grab the FBX of the boombox. This should all be fine. We're only importing a mesh, no animations or anything like that. It usually is set correctly, automatically. All right, so let me guess. We're gonna get the usual, smoothing thing. It's fine. All right, so I could just drag, oh, it looks like it's an enormous boombox for some reason. We'll have to fix the scaling. But this is a static mesh and it's not going to do anything at all except sit there. You can't pick it up. So what we're going to do is right click and create blueprint class, actor. And the naming convention is BP underscore. We'll call it orange boombox. And we can click into that. We have nothing right now. This is the viewport. Make sure you're in that to start. We'll also be using this event graph eventually. For now, stay in viewport. Then what we will do is add static mesh, because that's what our radio is. I'll just call this static mesh. And then over here, you can see, you can choose your boombox or whatever from the drop down. Here's the orange one. Okay, and we know that's quite large. So at least let me scale it down to, I don't know what point. Yeah. Guess for that. Let me compile it. And you know what I should have done also is saved these things that I've imported into the project. We can just compile that and save it. Let me just close it and we'll see what we have so far. This won't do anything, but we can see we can place it into the scene. It looks like it's still too big of a boombox. Let me at least figure out what we want to do. Wait, what is this? Why don't I just look at this blue? We know it's going to be 0.2. And you probably know this, but this little thing here, this will scale independently or lock them all together. So X, Y, and Z will scale together, which is usually what I do. We don't want to stretch out our boombox in any strange ways. All right, that's good. In our blueprint, we only have a static mesh so far, and we did not set physics or gravity. So right now, if we were to play the game, let's see. Yeah. No gravity, no physics. We won't be able to pick it up. Let's see what we have to add to the blueprint. All we need to do is find physics and tick simulate physics. We can also set a specific mass in kilograms if we want to. I don't really know kilograms very well. I don't know what 100 is. I'll try 20. I want this radio to feel quite heavy. All right, linear damping. If you don't know what something is, hover over it and it will give you a description. This is a drag force, basically like friction that's going to prevent your object from flying off at, an insanely high velocity. I don't know. For now, I'll set it to 2 and see what that's like. I might have to raise it. Angular damping is like, I guess, a force that's opposing the spin of the object. Like if we threw this, if we didn't want it spinning around like crazy, we want to increase this. Again, I don't really remember how high of a number we need. Enable gravity is usually checked, but it won't work unless physics is also checked. All right, let's see what happens. We have to compile and save. At this point, you should probably check to make sure your static mesh has a collider on it, which one easy way to do that is click on Show Collision, and then you're going to see all the collisions in your scene. And here, yeah, I can see that, well, this is the one for the tutorial. There is a collider. Actually, this one is a little more complex than it needs to be. I can go simplify that. Oh, also, I'm making another exact same boombox blueprint, but just with a cube with this cobblestone on it, just to show you don't need a fancy boombox mesh. You could just use a cube. Let's find our static mesh component. And we could check here as well. These are different collisions we could use. Here we can show simple collision. Yeah, that doesn't look too simple. So I could remove the collision. And then really, why not just a box? Oh, sorry, this speed is too high. Yeah, that's going to be fine. And now we'll have to see if this falls down. Yes. Hooray. We still can't pick up the boombox. We need to add, and we want to add it to the static mesh, add a grab component. All right, so make sure it's a child of the static mesh. And I'm not going to change the name of the grab component. And that should do it. Also make sure that your static mesh is set to movable as well. Now we can pick up the boombox. It feels like it has pretty good gravity. Let me test throwing it. That felt all right. We want our boombox to be able to play some music. Now let's just quickly look at very basic how to play a sound in our game. The most basic thing is a sound cue. So let's just make one really quick. Go to audio and find sound cue. Sound cue, call this one ambient beach sounds. I don't know. This is just an example. And we can click into that. All right, so what we have is an output. We need to add a sound file. And you'll have to import one into your project, of course. Let's see, where did I put stuff? Audio. All right, why are these thumbnails so big? Let's use waves and birds. That'll be a background noise in the scene. And you just drag it right in there. I think you can have a wave or an MP3. I believe I've dragged both kinds into the project before. And you just connect it to the output. Let's click on this node of the actual sound file. You could choose looping or not. Let's see, in the output, what do we have? Volume, pitch, attenuation. I don't think we really need to do anything here just for this basic sound. I'm just gonna save it. And then I just take the sound cue and drop it into the scene. Oh, and if I didn't mention this before, if you hit G, the G key, that will toggle your little icons of the scene. So if you're not seeing anything, hit the G key. And also another shortcut I don't think I mentioned is to switch between the move tool, rotation, and scaling. You can use W, E, and R. And that can confuses me because I always think R is for rotation, but actually E is for rotation. That might just be my brain, though, not functioning. Now, when we simulate the scene, one thing we do have to make sure of is down in the sound cue settings, auto activate is true. That means it's going to start at the beginning of the game. And that's what I want for this, the ocean sound. Now, if I didn't want it to sound the same everywhere I go, let's say the source of the sound was over here. Only this part of the ocean is making a sound. Then what I could do is come down here. Now we have spatialization. Here's attenuation. And what that means is, I guess, kind of like a fading away of the sound, or a sound being distorted in some way as you move further away from it. And you could choose this that comes with the project. There's an attenuation setting. This inner sphere is where you will hear the sound at 100% volume. And then as you move through this larger sphere, the sound will fade away until you are outside the sphere, and then you won't hear the sound at all. So let's come in here and simulate. Or we could override the attenuation settings, and then we could actually choose what we want. Natural sound, maybe, sphere shape, and then you can set the radius of your spheres. For my scene, however, I don't want any attenuation because I want the ocean sound to be everywhere. Probably just at a really low volume. Now we're going to make a sound cue for our boombox blueprint. And let's just do that the same way. We will go to Audio, Sound Cue. This will be called Boombox Playlist. All right, let's click into that. Same thing, but this time we're going to have more than one sound. Let's find where I put all the music. All right, here we go. Here are some of our tropical vacation songs. Can I drag them all in like this? Yes, I can. All right, very good. Then we can just drag this random node from over there. And then how many do we have? How many songs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure we have all the inputs we need. And then we just connect the dots. If you have graduated from kindergarten, that shouldn't be a problem. And then we really could just output it to here. Let's actually add a looping node. This way, after it plays through these, it will loop through again. Oh, and let's see, we'll click on the random. Make sure you have randomize without replacement. And you can read that description if you want, but basically it will make sure it plays each song one time. No repeats. And then after they've all played randomly, it will loop. And in looping, I'm going to loop indefinitely. I mean, that's why we're going to put the on-off button on the radio so the player can stop the music if they're going crazy. Or you can put in how many times you I could drop the sound cue into the game and test it, or I can test it from right here. Play cue. All right, that's a random song. Here's another one. We would have to keep listening, though, to make sure it played all the songs in the list, but I'm not going to do that right now. Maybe there's a way to cheat and fast forward through. I'm not sure. Anyway, I want to add some more songs, but they're a different category. So right now I'm just going to highlight these, hit C, and I'm going to call these, I don't know, island songs. I'm not really sure what to call them. Then I'm going to add these reggae songs. All right, so what I want in the game is to alternate between this type of music and then this type of music, so we don't hear too much in a row and get sick of reggae. So same thing as up here. I can actually just copy and paste that. And we can right click on this and delete that input. Now we're going to create another random. We could drag it from here or do it that way. And then these will plug in. Let's arrange this a little bit better. And I suppose I should label these as well. Reggae. The idea is that as the game progresses, it becomes more ominous as Cthulhu approaches. So the music will then become strange, and I have some strange music, but I won't put that in right now. We're going to add the sound cue to the boombox so that it will sound like the music originates from the boombox in our scene. And I really don't even have to do much. It's already figured out the audio is going to be that playlist, the sound cue. So I'll just click that and it's added. I mean, you used to have to do that manually. I guess it is smarter now. Make sure the sound cue is the correct one. And here's where we talked about the attenuation. Let's see, let's compile. And let's see now. We can do that all from here. In the details, you've got a drop down with your components. So here's the one we just added. And then in here, we can make those changes if we want to do attenuation or something like that. Let's see, why is this not showing up? Do I need, I need to hit G, as I discussed before. And for the boombox, we do want attenuation because that will just seem more realistic, that when you move away from the speakers, that the sound would get softer. So maybe something like this. Oh, excuse me, Cthulhu. Before I go into VR to test, I'm just going to make sure that the radius is a little bit outside my play area, just because otherwise when you leave and come back, it's going to pick a new song. And that doesn't really make sense realistically. It would be still the same song, but rather than, you know, create a variable and store the last song played, it's going to be easier just to make sure that I can't get outside the radius of the sound, but I will put it right at the edge of the play area, so it'll be quite quiet here, almost silent. You can show your navigation area and just make sure that I'm not going to go outside of the sound. That looks good. Let's try it.
Carry me girl on a jet ski. Yes, me are the best, me. God bless me. Me not care about nobody. Smile like I give her blue cheese. Jamaican me crazy, then turn lazy. Lickle, no, I can't stop me. Oh, Jamaican. Yeah, you Jamaican me crazy. Cause I only need to fill my belly with food, please. I've been working, but I'm never working too hard. Jamaican me crazy with sweet lady.
Now it's finally time to add the button. And you can get a nice mesh of a button if you want to. I'm just going to use a cylinder. I will call it not baton. All right, let me actually just organize these components for a second. I'll put the audio component under the mesh. Make sure the button is just a child of that. So everything is a subcomponent of the boombox mesh. Okay. So, where is my cylinder? Oh, it's enormous. All right, let's make this button sized. All right, we need to rotate this over X and scale it down a lot. And obviously, you should do a much better job of making the button look good. You know what? Mine is just going to stick out quite a lot, I think. For illustration purposes, it'll just make it simpler if the button is sticking out that much. All right, very nice. And the button will have a color too. I think, did I make one? Button, green or something. Green button. Yeah, here we go. I'll make it. And then the next thing we'll need is a collider, because we have to know when we touch the button, and that's done with colliders. So the VR hands, I guess, will have a collider, and when it overlaps this collider, which we're about to make, then things can happen. So we are going to add what are we doing here? Oh, it's not collider, it's collision. Box collision is what I'll use. I think that'll be a fine shape. Box button collide. All right, now where is this thing? All right, we just need to scale this to cover the button. And you can change the perspectives. I mean, we don't look at the bottom of it, but I've noticed that mine are always flipped around when I do this. Like if I do the right side, it's actually the front. So I don't know, I must have flipped my axes at some point. Anyway, I just like perspective and flying around on my own. All right, let's get this collider positioned a little bit better. And don't get confused. We do have a collider or a collision on the mesh itself, and that is set to physics actor. It's blocking things. It is query and physics enabled. Whereas on our button collider, we also have collision. And where is this? Here's physics, here's collision. And this is different, right? We have overlap events and overlap all dynamic. This is query only, no physics collision. And you can see here all these overlaps are checked, and block is not checked. And that should be fine. Keep in mind, because I don't think we've discussed this before, when you're in your main blueprint and you make changes to the settings, like I can add this low pass filter, which has to do with how muffled the sound is. I'm gonna select natural sound here, whatever you want to do. That is the default setting. So every time you drag in your boombox, you're going to get all those settings. Versus when it's already in here, and then you come down and change settings. Like it seems like the same thing. We can, check this or uncheck this, but this only applies to this one particular boombox because we've already put it in the scene. It's an instance of that boombox, not the default. And whatever we change here and save it will only apply to this one, whereas the main blueprint is all the default settings. A better example of that might be these idols that will be used in a throwing game to knock these down, maybe. So I have a blueprint of the idol. I can add as many. So these all have the same scale, and they have a grab component and gravity. But what I can do now is find the mesh on this one and I could swap it out for a different one, right? So they're basically the same thing. We're just changing a component. I could also change the weight a little bit on this one, but you get the idea. I can use that same blueprint to create variations. For our boombox, though, we're only going to have one in the scene. Like this guy could have this mesh. You get the idea then of the blueprints, what they're used for. And yes, I am going to change the material on here so it's not all blurry. This was just made in meshy. It needs to be fixed. Time to make the event graph with blueprints. So let's go into our blueprint, and we will be in the event graph now. Before we were in the viewport. And we are going to generate when the VR hands collide with the button collider, we're going to have an overlap event because, remember, on our button collider, we have generate overlap events. Okay, so this is going to be the overlap event. So we're on the button collider, on component, begin overlap, button collider. Okay. And there are a lot of ways to do this, actually, but I think we're going to detect the VR pawn, and we can just do a cast to VR pawn. And that's going to be the safest way because we don't want anything to happen unless it is the player's hand that contacts the button. And this is going to ensure that it is indeed the VR pawn. Then we need to, first of all, you know what we need to do? We have to make ourselves a variable here because here's our components, right? These are automatically listed because we've created these different components. But you can also create your own variable. These are all, we can't really do anything here. These are components. But we can add a new variable, and we're going to call that is playing. And that is a Boolean. We don't even have to change this. By default, it's on Boolean, which just means it's a true or a false. Is the radio playing music or is it not? All right, so now what we're going to do here is we are going to branch. Because, we're going to determine, first of all, is it playing or not? I think that's the only thing we have to do, right? So we'll bring in is playing. We're going to get is playing. First what we need to do, though, is we need to compile. When you create a variable compile, then you're going to get some more options over here. And if you, at the bottom here, we can say is playing. If it's unchecked is false. If it's checked is true. And when this game starts, the radio is going to be playing. I'm going to start that checked, true. All right, so we're going to check here, is it playing or not? Now, the first time through, that'll be true, it is playing. All right, so if it is playing and we hit the button, that means we're turning it off. So we're going to stop. We are going to stop the component, the boombox playlist. That's our audio component that we created before. And we're going to stop that. If false, so if it's not playing, it means we're going to turn it on. We're going to play our audio component. All right. We don't really need both of these. Share this with both. All right, now this is giving us an option for start time. We don't need to put anything there. Okay, so there's that logic, what we have so far. Then after we do this, we need to set our variable again. So we're gonna set is playing. All right, we've stopped it, so now it's false. Just copy paste this. If we start it up again, is playing will be true. All right, so that's all good. Is that enough? It's actually not going to work quite yet because we have to add colliders to the VR hands. You can find that. Just search for VR pawn. That's what I've already done here. And the blueprint class for VR pawn. Open that, and do not worry, we don't have to look at any of this in the event graph. We're going to the viewport. And let's see, what do we have here? Oh yeah, I already hid this piece. Let me show you how to do that. On the camera, there is a head-mounted display. If you search for visible, this will be checked, and you can see that this slow down here, is in the way of seeing the hands. So just make sure you hide that. Oh, let me click on it again. All right, there, that's a lot better. Another trick is look through unlit. That helps me see these hands a little bit better. Maybe there's a way to get rid of the camera. I don't know. I didn't see a visibility option for that. All right, so we're in here looking at our hands. We need to add some colliders. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to find hand left, and I'm going to add, search for collision, sphere collision. All right, this is going to give us a giant sphere. And so just shrink that down. And I know it doesn't really seem like the right shape for the hand, but it will work. So just try to shape it as best you can. It does seem weird to me that the hands don't come with some collision on them. But yeah, and apparently to pick things up with the VR hands, you don't need colliders. You know, when you're in the VR template with that pistol and all those cubes you can pick up, it is using the location of your hands to grip and pick things up. Don't ask me, but somehow you don't need colliders for that. For our button press, though, we are going to use that overlap from the colliders. All right, so we have a sphere on the left hand. We can, refine this later as to the location. Let's just see what we need to set here for now. We do not want to simulate physics. That's a whole other thing that we can talk about later, but I just want this overlap all dynamic. This is fine. Generate overlap events, definitely. And then yeah, all these overlap boxes are checked. That's what we want. Just on overlap, begin. And this will create our overlap. All right, let's compile and save. We've only put the collider around the left hand, so the right hand will not work. Actually, two more things about the hands before we proceed. I think, let's see. Can we? Yeah, so when you're working on one hand, you could hide the other hand. That might seem pretty obvious, but will help you see what's going on with your collider. The other thing is, let me go back onto my collider. actually, it's right where we saw that visible toggle. It's in rendering. Hidden in game is checked. But if you uncheck that, you're actually going to see your collider when you're in VR. And that's going to help us actually look at the collision between this and our button. And while we're at it, we could, is our button collider going to be visible or not? Let's check that out. Or what is it? What was it called? Hidden? Hidden in game. All right, so I will uncheck that as well. We'll see if we can observe both of our colliders inside the game. You can see the collider on the left hand. It's a faint red outline. The right hand has no collider and doesn't work, but the left hand does when the colliders overlap. When we bend the fingers, though, the collider still sticks out, which isn't very realistic. You can contact the button without the fingers actually touching it. But it does work. For more precision with the colliders on the hand, we can select the left hand and let's add a capsule collision. The idea here is we're going to have one collider on the index finger, since that can be moved separately, and then another collider over the rest of the fingers in a block. So first we're adding the capsule collider. Now before you do anything with scaling or position, come down to parent socket. And we are going to attach this collider to the finger. And I believe these are the bones in the hand. If you look for index, make sure you're on the correct hand or on the left hand. And I believe it's index 03 is the tip of the finger. Click on that, and then we can scale. Oops, I better lock these together. Scale it down. If you do this in a different order, it's not going to be in the right position, I'm pretty sure. That actually looks like a good size. And we can check and make sure everything is set up correctly. I think it will be. Yeah, that looks good. Oh, we can make sure it's going to be visible. Oh, check that hidden. Oops, that's not how you spell hidden. All right, we want it to be visible, so let's uncheck hidden in game. All right, that covers that index finger. Now we can add, well, let's make sure we're on the hand again. And we'll add a box collider this time, box collision. And this one, we can uncheck this while we're there. This one, the socket will be, how about the ring finger? Like that, and then scale it down. This one we will make it more of a rectangle shape, maybe. Flatten it. We can extend it that way, maybe. Something like that. Maybe it could be even longer. All right, and in theory, these will move with the fingers. Let's compile and see what happens. All right, you can see the outlines. I actually switched the ring finger to the second joint. That works a little bit better. I might shrink that collider still more. let's try the pointer finger, the index. And that works well. What about the other ones? This one's a bit clunkier, but I think we're going to have issues with the two colliders. Yeah, see, it's not stopping because one is triggering and then the second is triggering and sort of undoing. So if I stop, it's going to start immediately if I'm using two fingers. We'll add some logic so that when one of the finger colliders enters the button collider, we'll just say don't register any other collisions while that overlap is occurring. I think that will work, hopefully. Let's go into the boombox blueprint, into the event graph, and here we will create a variable called is overlapped. I don't know, is that even a word? All right, so we don't want anything to happen if there is overlap occurring on the button. Okay, so let's compile first, right? And then at the beginning of the game, it's not overlapped, so that is unchecked. Okay, let's bring in is overlapped, and we're going to get that to start. So on component, begin overlap over the button collider. Even before we check, or no, do we want to cast to VR pawn? Let's see. Yeah, let's first check if it's overlapped. That's the first thing we'll do. And if it is overlapped, we want nothing to happen. If it's not overlapped, then we can allow the overlap to proceed. So is that really going to work? Let's see. Is it overlapped the first time? No. And then it would proceed to check if the player is touching it. Okay, that seems like it will work. But then at the end, after we start or stop, we need to set that variable to true. Okay, so we're going to set is overlapped because now it is overlapped. And in both cases, that will be the same thing. All right, so now that's true. Compile, save. All right, but then when the player moves the finger out of the collider area, we need to change is overlapped back to false. So let's click on our button collider, and then down here we can grab on component end overlap. And here we will cast to VR pawn. If it's our VR pawn that we're talking about, then we're going to set is overlapped to false. Yeah, that pin has to be connected there. Okay.
Vacaciones tropicales, rodeado de palmeras. Ya vi otra vez, está en remojo la billetera.
Me the blood touch down, feeling high. Eso es lo que ordenamos.
Now we get to do some fun things, finally, in our blueprint. Let's first have the button change color, whether it's on or off. So we'll have it be red. All right, here we're stopping it. When we stop, then the button is off, and we will... Oh, hang on. Do I need to be clicked on something? Hold on. Set material. Okay, we can just type that in, and then we can choose. We want the button. Set material. And I have created a material. Red button. And just a red color. Very simple. Okay, and then I can copy paste that. If we are playing, then it's green. We want a green button. Choose green button. Okay, connect this as the target. All right, good. And then one more fun thing we can do is we could play a sound as well, a click. And that is just play sound 2D. I think we can just do it like that. And we choose our sound. I have one called click. Now click on button or click. Is this my file? No, mine is just click. Okay.
Mándame una cerveza o una cóctel bebida. Arrive at resort. Tropical, I'm ready for a big one. Fine people are already in the hot tub. Cause I just wanna be alone. Hot tub, don't come in the hot tub. Don't come in the hot tub.
Create those same colliders for the right hand as well. And don't forget to make everything visible again. I think it might be invisible in the game unless you enable visibility here, I think. What was that other one that I had hidden? I don't know. I'm just going to make everything visible again. And also, in the boombox blueprint, I'm going to maybe work on this button collider shape a little bit because I'm afraid the finger, if it pokes through too far and then comes outside the collider and then goes back in again, it's going to turn it on and off, and we don't want that. So if I just extend this maybe a little bit, oops, not like that. You might want to switch over to wireframe view And you could also use some of these. Oops, back to wireframe view. And then, yeah, we could see more easily. Well, actually, this isn't too bad. Oh, actually. Oh, these things are inverted. Okay, whatever. Maybe that depth is okay. I'll also fix this because I realized if the player carries the boombox way over here and drops it, then they could go outside the range and then the song would change when they come back in again. So I'm just going to fix that. And what am I using? I'm using this low pass filter at 2000. I'm not sure what that's doing exactly. You have to have the spatialization checked here, I believe, even though I've unchecked it down here. Because this, I don't know, it felt like to me it would, sometimes the sound would only go in one ear and not the other, depending on your direction. And that sort of annoyed me. I felt like when it was stereo and only going in one ear, I don't know, it just annoyed me in VR. So I'm going to turn that off. All right, so I'm going to expand this fall off distance now to the edge of the island. So they cannot escape the bounds, even if they move the boombox. All right, and I'm using this natural sound. I'll have to pay attention to the fall off and make sure, that sounds normal in the way I want it to be.
Una montaña en la oscuridad, crecimiento maldito más allá de la sílice, elevados montículos de colina.
Reach to the island and the Mándame una cerveza.
If for some reason you do not want to use cast to VR pawn, you could use tags. And well, first of all, let's look at where you would put those tags. Those would go on the colliders that you've put on the hands. And I think I've already added them here. Just click on your collider and you can search for tag. And this will not be here. So let's see if I can delete this. All right, so it would just look like this and you can add the tag. And make sure you type it exactly correctly. And if you're going to put that on all 4 of the colliders, copy and paste that. Make sure that the letters are all exactly the same because when you're in your blueprint here, you're going to add this component has tag. And here you're going to paste that same word, whatever your tag is, and it has to match exactly. To add that node, what you would do is drag off other component. And the reason we're not using overlapped component is because that refers to the boombox itself. And we're looking for a component on a different actor. So this would be the overlapped VR hands collider. And look for component has tag. That's what we want. And definitely copy and paste this exactly, whatever the tag is that you chose. All right, so then this is going to return a true or false. Does that collider that we've encountered have this tag on it? All right, so that'll be a true or a false. If it's true, we proceed, with pushing the button. Otherwise, nothing happens. And I believe then we have to add another branch here before we cast to the pawn, and then I think it went straight into this branch. So you might have to do that. And then don't forget, we're going to end the overlap as well. And if we're not using cast to VR pawn, you have to add that same component has tag and the branch in the same way that we did before. Don't forget to compile and save.
You feel the light one night. Man, I live up my life. Man, I live up my life. Come bright different type. Man, I live up my life. Call me friends to see the light. Man, I live up my life. Me say, rude boy, no give up in the life. Let the vow give up in the life. We gon' live up in the life. More fire. Segregation, isolation, honey libation, indoctrination, oh, sublimation, more gap.
Los árboles de coco rodean la costa, las olas del océano nos mecen. El sol está en su punto más alto.
Me I go to the fairground to play the balloon pop game. You win the tiger, feel me, girl. She now pay $1. When them sell the cotton candy, 2.5 cheaper when you leave the fairground. Me buy her some after. Me I go high, bright on the balloon to go.